Some wounds don't bleed, but they carve themselves deep into the soul. My name is Estefania, I'm 70 years old, and I once believed I had lived a complete life. I never married, never had children of my own. Only one boy I adopted when I was 25. He was a scared little orphan. I was just a young woman with a heart big enough to hold him. I raised him with my hands. With the sweat of double shifts in a textile factory. With my youth, my dreams, and every lonely night I endured. For 45 years I never complained. I always told myself, as long as he's happy, every sacrifice is worth it. But on his wedding day, under bright lights and soft music, he took the microphone, looked straight into my eyes, and thanked another woman for being his real mother. I sat there, wearing the coral dress I had saved for months to buy, listening to applause echo through the hall, feeling my heart shatter in silence. Everything I had done, everything I had given, was erased in a single sentence. But that night, while everyone else slept, I made a promise to myself. I would no longer be the woman who was grateful for crumbs of affection. I would take back my dignity, my peace, and my life. That was the night Estefania Herrera, the gentle, selfless mother who lived only for others, died. And in her place, a new woman was born, strong, calm, and ready to make things right. I spent $19,000 on my son's wedding. I paid every cent of that party. And in the middle of the reception he took the microphone and said, "I want to thank my real mother," pointing at my mother-in-law. I stayed silent while everyone looked at me. Then I did something he will never forget. I'm Stephanie, I'm 70 years old. And for 45 of those years I was the only mother Mark ever knew. I adopted him when he was 5 years old, after his biological parents died in an accident. He was a shy, frightened boy who cried every night asking for his dead mom. I was a single woman of 25. I worked double shifts in a textile factory to be able to support him. I gave up my youth, my dreams, any chance of building my own family. All for him. I gave him unconditional love, private education, vacations I myself could never afford as a child. Mark grew up spoiled, protected, lacking absolutely nothing. I sacrificed everything I had and everything I was for that boy who now publicly despised me. When he turned 18, I told him the truth about his adoption. His reaction was cold, distant. "I already knew," he said to me. "I always knew you weren't my real mother." Those words pierced me like knives. But I thought that with time we would overcome it. I was completely wrong. 3 years ago, Mark met Barbara, a calculating woman who, from the very first day, saw me as an obstacle. She came from a wealthy family. Her mother, Monica, had properties, businesses, influence. Compared to that, I was just a retiree living off a modest pension in a small apartment. For Barbara, I was an embarrassment that had to be hidden. She began whispering poison into my son's ear. "Your adoptive mother is too meddlesome," she would tell him. My mother would never interfere so much in our affairs. Mark started to change. The visits became sporadic, the phone calls shorter, the answers drier. Each passing day, my son drifted farther away from me. But when they announced the wedding, I was ready to give everything for him. One more time. Mark came to my house one afternoon. He sat on my couch as if he were a stranger. "I need you to help me with the wedding," he said without even greeting me. "Barbara's parents already contributed their part, but we need more money for the venue we want." I asked how much he needed. $19,000, he answered without blinking. It was practically all my life savings. The money I had set aside for medical emergencies, for my funeral, to not be a burden to anyone. "That's a lot of money, Mark," I said. His answer made my blood run cold. "If you really loved me like you say you do, you wouldn't think twice." That night I couldn't sleep. $19,000 represented 45 years of sacrifices, of working until exhaustion, of denying myself small pleasures to save every penny. But it was my son's wedding. I thought that maybe, after that gesture, he would remember everything I had done for him. The next day I went to the bank. I withdrew every cent of my savings. I handed the check to Mark with no conditions, no reproach. He took it as if it were the most natural thing in the world. As if I owed him that and much more. He didn't even thank me, he just said, "Barbara's going to be happy." The following months were a nightmare of preparations in which I was treated like just another employee. Barbara decided everything, the menu, the flowers, the music, even where I could sit. "It's my wedding, not yours," she would say every time I tried to give an opinion. Mark remained silent, letting his fiancée humiliate me again and again. One day I tried to suggest inviting my few friends from the factory. Barbara looked at me with contempt and said, "We don't want this wedding to look ordinary." Mark nodded. My friends, the women who had stood by me for decades, were not good enough for the wedding I was paying for. The day of the wedding I arrived early at the hall. I wore a coral-colored dress I had bought especially for the occasion. I wanted to look dignified for my son. But when Mark saw me, his first reaction was disgust. "Don't you have something more discreet?" he asked. "I don't want you drawing attention." As if my mere presence were an inconvenience. The ceremony was beautiful. I cried with emotion watching my boy become a man, forming his own family. Despite everything, he was still my son. The little boy I had once comforted in my arms. I thought that maybe, after the wedding, things would get better between us. How naive I was. Then came the moment for the thank yous at the reception. Mark took the microphone, smiled at all the guests, and said the words that shattered me. "I want to thank my real mother, Mrs. Monica, for welcoming me into her family with so much love." And he pointed to my mother-in-law while everyone applauded. There, sitting at that table, wearing my coral dress and my broken heart, I made the most important decision of my life. That night, Mark would learn what it meant to lose everything. I stayed seated at that table, smiling as if nothing had happened. But inside something had broken forever. The guests looked at me with pity. Some whispered among themselves. Monica, the mother-in-law, came up to me with a fake smile. "Stephanie, what a lovely ceremony," she said in her syrupy voice. "Thank you for everything you did for Mark when he was little. Now we'll take care of him." Those words were like a slap in the face. When he was little. As if my role had ended decades ago. As if 45 years of motherhood meant absolutely nothing. Monica kept talking. "Barbara told me you sacrificed a lot for Mark. But you don't have to worry anymore. He's in good hands now." I nodded politely, but every word was a dagger. This woman who had appeared in my son's life barely 3 years earlier, believed she had the right to relegate me to the past. Mark came over to our table, radiant with happiness. "Wasn't my speech emotional?" Monica asked him. She hugged him. "Beautiful son, you moved us all." Son, she called him. My son, the boy I had raised, educated, and loved unconditionally for 45 years. Mark smiled and returned the hug. "Thank you, Mom Monica, for all the support you've given Barbara and me." He didn't even look at me. It was as if I were invisible at my own table. Barbara came running in her pink dress. Did you see what Mark said? I'm so happy." She hung from her new husband's arm. "My love, my mom is organizing a surprise honeymoon for us. 3 weeks in Europe. Can you believe it?" Mark kissed her passionately. "Your mom is amazing, always thinking of us." There I was, the woman who had paid $19,000 for that wedding, watching them celebrate another woman's gifts. Monica had properties, successful businesses, powerful connections. I only had an empty bank account and a shattered heart. The party went on. Mark and Barbara danced their first dance as husband and wife. Monica recorded them with her phone, excited like a proud grandmother. I remained seated, watching as my son lived the most important day of his life, without even acknowledging my presence. Close to midnight I decided to leave. I walked up to Mark to say goodbye. "I'm leaving, son. It was a beautiful wedding." He barely lifted his eyes from his conversation with Barbara's friends. "Oh yeah. "Thanks for coming." As if I were just another guest. As if I hadn't financed every detail of that celebration. Barbara intercepted me on my way out. "Stephanie, before you go, I wanted to ask you a favor." My heart filled with hope. Maybe she wanted to thank me, maybe acknowledge my sacrifice. "Mark and I are planning to buy a house after the honeymoon. Something big with a garden in an exclusive neighborhood. We know you still have some savings left." Froze. "Barbara, I just spent all my savings on this wedding." She smiled condescendingly. "Come on, Stephanie, a woman your age doesn't need that much money. Besides, it would be an investment in your son's future. Think about it." And she walked away, leaving me with the words stuck in my throat. I left the hall with trembling legs. The valet brought me my car, a small 15-year-old sedan that looked shamefully out of place among the luxury vehicles of the other guests. As I drove back to my apartment, the tears began to fall. 45 years of unconditional love summarized in one night of public humiliation. I arrived home and sat on my sofa, still wearing the coral dress. I looked around my modest apartment. The photos of Mark on the walls, from age 5 to his college graduation. His room, which I had kept intact for years, hoping he would come visit me. The birthday gifts he never used, but that I had saved lovingly. Everything seemed like a mockery now. I had lived for that boy. I had given up everything for him. And now he had erased me from his life with a single phrase. "My real mother." As if the previous 45 years had been a lie. That night I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in bed, remembering every moment of humiliation. The way Mark introduced me to some guests as the lady who raised me. The way Barbara ignored me during the toast. The comments I heard in the bathroom. "Poor woman, it must be painful to see your son prefer another family." The next day, Mark called me from the airport. "I just wanted to let you know we're leaving for our honeymoon." His voice sounded impatient, as if calling me were an obligation. "Oh, and Barbara wanted me to tell you that when we come back, we're going to need help with the expenses for the new house. You know, it's time to show how much you love me." Those words were the last straw. "Mark," I said with a trembling voice, "I just spent all my savings on your wedding." He sighed with irritation. "Mom, don't be so dramatic. I know you have more money saved. You've always been thrifty." The line went dead. He didn't even say goodbye. I stayed there, holding the phone, processing what had just happened. My son had just asked me for more money the day after his wedding. After publicly humiliating me. And when I told him I had spent everything on him, he hung up on me. That moment something changed inside me. For 70 years I had been a submissive woman, swallowing my pride, putting others before myself. I had accepted humiliation, contempt, mistreatment, always believing it was my duty to suffer in silence. But that phone call woke me up. Mark didn't see me as his mother. He saw me as an ATM. Barbara didn't respect me as the woman who had raised her husband. She saw me as a rival to be eliminated. Monica didn't thank me for taking care of Mark for decades. She saw me as a nuisance from the past. I walked to my bedroom and opened the drawer of my dresser. There at the back was the envelope I hadn't touched in years. The envelope containing documents Mark had never seen. Documents that proved something he had never suspected. I took out the papers with trembling hands. Deposit certificates, property deeds, insurance policies. My father's inheritance, which I had kept secret for decades. The assets I had accumulated not only by working at the textile factory, but also by investing wisely every extra cent. Mark thought I was a poor retiree living off a miserable pension. He had no idea that his adoptive mother owned properties worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. He didn't know I had bank accounts in 3 different banks. He didn't suspect that the woman he had just humiliated publicly was richer than his precious mother-in-law, Monica. I smiled for the first time in months. Mark wanted to know what it meant to have a real mother. Barbara wanted to see how much money she could squeeze out of me. Monica wanted to erase me from my son's life. Very soon, all three of them would find out who they were really dealing with. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I had saved for years. Mendoza Law Firm, answered a professional voice. This is Stephanie Herrera, I said. I need to speak to Attorney Raul urgently. It's about a family inheritance. Attorney Raul received me in his office 3 days later. He was an elegant man in his 50s. Someone I had worked with years earlier when my father died. Mrs. Stephanie, what a pleasure to see you again, he said, shaking my hand. It's been a long time. How can I help you? I sat down in front of his mahogany desk and took a deep breath. I want you to review all my assets, counselor. Properties, bank accounts, investments. Everything I inherited from my father and everything I've accumulated over the years. Raul opened a thick folder. Of course. I remember your father was a very foresight man. Let me check the updated documents. While he read, I remembered how I had come to have that hidden fortune. My father had been a hard-working immigrant who bought cheap land on the outskirts of the city when I was a child. One day this will be worth gold, he used to tell me. He was right. Those lands were now in the heart of the financial district. Impressive, murmured Raul. You have 4 commercial properties, 2 luxury apartments for rent, and investment accounts with a total value of. He paused and looked at me over his glasses. $940,000, Mrs. Stephanie. The figure hit me even though I already knew it. $940,000. While Mark had humiliated me over $19,000. I secretly owned nearly $1 million that he knew nothing about. Counselor, I said firmly. I want to make some changes to my will. For the next 2 hours we reviewed every detail. Raul took notes while I explained my new decisions. I want my son Mark removed as beneficiary of all my assets. In his place, I want to create a charitable foundation for single mothers who adopt children. The lawyer raised his eyebrows. Are you sure, Mrs. Stephanie? That's a very drastic decision. Completely sure, I replied. My son made it very clear at his wedding that I'm not his real mother. If that's the case, then he has no right to inherit anything from a stranger. Raul nodded and kept writing. I also want you to prepare an official letter addressed to Mark, informing him of these changes. I left the lawyer's office feeling liberated for the first time in years. I had taken the first step to reclaim my dignity. But this was only the beginning. Mark, Barbara, and Monica had completely underestimated me. They thought I was a helpless old lady they could trample on. They were about to find out how wrong they were. That same afternoon, I went to visit one of my properties, an elegant office building downtown. The manager, Mr. Elias, greeted me with surprise. Mrs. Stephanie, what an honor to see you here. Do you need anything in particular? I explained that I wanted to see the apartment on the top floor. The penthouse that had been vacant for months. It's a beautiful property, Elias explained as we went up in the elevator. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. Terrace with a panoramic view. We've had it for rent, but when we entered the apartment, I was left breathless. It was spectacular. Marble floors, huge windows, a modern kitchen that looked like something out of a magazine. Mr. Elias, I said. Cancel the rental listing. I'm moving in here. The man looked at me, confused. Are you sure, Mrs. Stephanie? This apartment costs $3,000 a month in rent. Your current place must cost a fraction of that. Smiled. I'm completely sure. Prepare the contract. That night I called a luxury moving company. I want all my belongings moved tomorrow morning from my current apartment to the penthouse in the solarium building, I told them. And I want you to hire decorators to make sure the place is spotless. The cost of the service was more than I used to spend in 3 months. But I didn't care anymore. The next day, while the workers were packing my things, I got a call from Mark. He had just returned from his honeymoon. Mom, where are you? I went to your apartment and there are moving trucks outside. His voice sounded worried, but not for me. He was worried about his plans to ask me for a mo. I'm moving, Mark, I replied calmly. Moving where? Why didn't you tell me anything? I could hear Barbara in the background asking what was going on. I didn't think it was necessary to inform you, I said. After all, as you made very clear at your wedding, I'm not your real mother. There was an uncomfortable silence. Mom, don't be dramatic. You know what? Love you. Just that, well, Mrs. Monica has been like a second mother to me. Those words confirmed what I already knew. To Mark I was replaceable. Mark, I said. If you need me, my new contact number is with Attorney Raoul. He has all my updated information. Attorney Raoul. Why do you have a lawyer? Mom, you're scaring me. For the first time in months, I detected insecurity in his voice. I'm just putting my affairs in order, son. At 70 years old, it's the responsible thing to do. I hung up before he could respond. That afternoon, I settled into my new home. The penthouse was a dream come true. From the terrace, I could see the entire city stretching out at my feet. The decorators had done an excellent job. Elegant furniture, silk curtains, a kitchen equipped with the latest appliances. I poured myself a glass of French wine from a bottle that cost more than what I used to spend on a week's worth of groceries, and sat in my new living room. For the first time in decades, I felt in control of my life. No more living waiting for crumbs of affection from Mark. No more accepting humiliation from Barbara. No more being invisible to Monica. On the third day in my new apartment, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. Mrs. Stephanie, this is Monica, Barbara's mother. Her voice had lost all the fake sweetness from the wedding. I need to speak with you urgently. Smiled. The fun was just beginning. Of course, Mrs. Monica. How can I help you? There was a pause. Mark told me you moved and that you have a lawyer. Barbara's very worried. Did something happen? The concern in her voice was music to my ears. After decades of being ignored, now they needed answers from me. Nothing serious happened, I replied calmly. I just decided to make a few changes in my life. At 70 years old, one learns that life is too short to waste it on people who don't value you. Another longer pause. Mrs. Stephanie, could we meet? I think there's been a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? I repeated softly. How interesting. When you humiliated me at the wedding, there were no misunderstandings. When Mark asked me for more money the next day, there were no confusions. But now that I've disappeared from your lives, suddenly everything is a misunderstanding. Of course, Mrs. Monica, we can meet. But you'll have to come to my new apartment. I don't go out as much as before. I gave her my new address. The Solarium building was known throughout the city as one of the most exclusive. I knew Monica would recognize the address immediately. The Solarium building? She asked, surprised. Yes, I confirmed. Penthouse, 25th floor. The doorman will announce you. I hung up smiling. Monica arrived 2 hours later, accompanied by Barbara and Mark. The three of them looked nervous when the doorman announced them. You can come up, I said through the intercom. When the elevator doors opened on my floor, their faces of astonishment were my first victory. Good heavens, murmured Barbara, looking around the apartment. How can you afford this? Mark walked through the living room as if he were in a museum, touching the furniture in disbelief. Monica maintained her composure, but I could see the confusion in her eyes. Please sit down, I said, pointing to the Italian leather sofa. Would you like something to drink? I have French wine, Scotch whiskey, champagne. Monica politely declined. But Mark couldn't hide his bewilderment. Mom, where did you get the money for all this? That question was exactly what I had been waiting for. I sat down in front of them, crossed my legs elegantly and smiled. My dear Mark, there are many things about your adoptive mother you never bothered to ask. Mark leaned forward, his eyes fixed on me. What do you mean by that, Mom? Monica and Barbara exchanged nervous glances. I could see their minds racing, trying to understand how a simple retiree could live in such luxury. Well, I began slowly, savoring every second. It turns out that my father, your adoptive grandfather, was a very intelligent man when it came to investments. When he died, he left me several properties. Mark frowned. Properties? You never told me any of that. I smiled sweetly. You never asked, dear. For 45 years you focused only on what I could give you immediately. You were never interested in knowing my story, my origins, my family. The truth of those words hit the air like a slap. Barbara shifted uncomfortably on the sofa. But why were you living in that modest apartment if you had money? Her voice carried an accusatory tone, as if I had personally deceived her. Because, my dear Barbara, I learned early that money attracts the wrong kind of people. My father taught me to live with humility. Monica finally spoke. Mrs. Stephanie, I understand you might be upset about some comments made at the wedding. But Mark loves you very much. He just wanted to thank our family for welcoming him warmly. Her voice sounded conciliatory, but false. Some comments, I repeated, letting the phrase hang in the air. Mark stood before 200 guests and publicly declared that you are his real mother. That wasn't a comment, Mrs. Monica. It was a statement. Mark turned pale. Mom, I didn't mean. Didn't mean what, Mark? I interrupted. Didn't mean to hurt me. Didn't mean to humiliate me. Didn't mean to erase 45 years of motherhood in a single sentence. My voice had hardened. Or maybe. You just didn't mean for me to find out who you really are. Silence stretched for several minutes. Barbara nervously played with her wedding ring. Monica kept her forced smile. Mark looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. Mom, he finally said. I'm really sorry if I hurt you. It wasn't my intention. He was nervous, emotional. Mark, I cut him off. Let me tell you something about intentions. When you were 5 years old and cried every night, my intention was to comfort you. When I worked 2 jobs to pay for your private school, my intention was to give you the best opportunities. When I spent my savings on your wedding, my intention was to see you happy. I stood up and walked toward the window, turning my back on them. But when you called me the day after your wedding asking for more money, what was your intention, Mark? When Barbara told me that a woman my age didn't need that much money, what was her intention? Barbara turned red. I never said that. I turned slowly toward her. Really? Because I have a very good memory. Your exact words were, a woman your age doesn't need that much money. It would be an investment in your son's future. The tension in the room was palpable. Monica tried to mediate. Mrs. Stephanie, I think we're all exaggerating. We're family now. We should support each other. I smiled coldly. Family. What an interesting word. Mark made it very clear that his real family includes you, Mrs. Monica. I'm just the lady who raised him. Mark stood up abruptly. Enough. This is ridiculous. You're acting like a spoiled child. His words echoed through the apartment like a gunshot. Monica looked at him reproachfully. Mark, don't talk to your mother like that. But the damage was already done. There it is, I said calmly. There's the real Mark, the one who comes out when things don't go his way. I walked toward my handbag and took out a folder. Since we're being honest, allow me to show you something. I opened the folder on the coffee table. They were photographs of my properties. This is the office building where I live now. I inherited it from my father. Mark leaned closer to get a better look. I also have this apartment complex in the Palermo district. Barbara gasped, literally choked back a scream. And this shopping plaza downtown. Their faces reflected total disbelief. Monica stared at the photos as if they were documents from another planet. I also have investment accounts, I continued, and a few smaller properties. I closed the folder. In total, my estate amounts to $840,000. Barbara fainted. She literally collapsed on the couch. Mark ran to help her while Monica fanned her with a magazine. 840,000, Mark murmured. You had 840,000. And you let me spend my savings on medical emergencies last year? That question revealed exactly who he was. Not even in that moment of shock could he see beyond his own benefit. "Mark," I said softly, "at any point during that medical emergency, did you ask how I was doing? Did you care about my emotional health? Or did you only care about the money?" Monica helped Barbara sit up. The young woman was pale and trembling. "I don't understand," she stammered. "If you had so much money, why did you act like you were poor? Why did you let us pay for things if you could afford them?" Her indignation was fascinating, as if I had stolen something from her. "Barbara," I replied, "I never acted like I was poor. I simply lived on my pension and kept my wealth private. You all assumed that because I was a retiree who adopted a child, I must be poor. That was your decision, not mine." Mark ran his hands through his hair, processing the information. "Mom, this changes everything. We could have done so many things together. We could have what, Mark?" I interrupted. "We could have been a real family. Or we could have spent my money on things you wanted." The question hung in the air. Mark couldn't answer, because we both knew the truth. Monica cleared her throat. "Mrs. Stephanie, I understand you're hurt. But now that we know the whole truth, we can start over, as a united family." I looked at this woman who had orchestrated my public humiliation, and now wanted to start over after discovering my fortune. "Mrs. Monica," I said with a smile, "I'm afraid it's too late for that." I took another document from my purse. "This is my new will. Mark has been removed as beneficiary of all my assets." All three faces went white at once. "In his place, I've created a foundation for single mothers who adopt abandoned children." The silence that followed was deafening. Mark looked at me as if I had just shot him. Barbara began to cry. Monica kept her composure, but her hands trembled slightly. "Mom," Mark whispered, "you can't do this. I'm your son." I smiled sadly. "No, Mark. As you made very clear at your wedding, I'm not your real mother. And if that's the case, then you're not really my son." Mark stood frozen for several seconds, processing my words. Then he exploded. "This is insane. You can't disinherit me over one stupid comment." His voice had turned sharp, desperate. "I'm your son. I've loved you all my life. Have you loved me?" I asked calmly. "Mark, tell me one single time in the last 3 years that you've called me just to ask how I was. One single time that you've visited me without asking for money. One single time you've included me in your plans without me having to pay for something." He stayed silent. Barbara was sobbing on the couch while Monica tried to console her. "This is unfair," Barbara murmured through tears. "We love him. My family welcomed him warmly." The irony of her words was delicious. "Barbara," I said softly, "when you told me that a woman my age didn't need that much money, was that love? When you seated me at the back table at the wedding I paid for, was that family inclusion? When Mark publicly thanked another woman as his real mother, was that respect?" Monica finally spoke. Her voice had lost all pretense of sweetness. "Mrs. Stephanie, I understand you're hurt, but this is revenge. Are you really going to punish Mark for the rest of his life for one mistake?" Her words confirmed what I had always suspected. To her, I was only an obstacle between her new family and my money. "It's not revenge, Mrs. Monica," I replied. "It's justice. Mark made a conscious decision to replace me as his mother. Now he's living the consequences of that decision." I walked toward the window, gazing at the city. "Besides, I don't understand why you're all so worried. According to Mark, you're his real mother now. Surely you can provide for him." The silence that followed was revealing. Mark looked at Monica expectant, but she averted her eyes. The reality was that despite all her airs of a wealthy family, Monica's resources didn't compare to mine. And now that Mark knew how much money he had lost, Monica's pension seemed insignificant. "Mom," said Mark, his voice now pleading, "please forgive me. I was an idiot. I was nervous at the wedding. I wanted to make a good impression on Barbara's family. I didn't think about how you would feel. Tears began to roll down his cheeks. I love you. I've always loved you. You're my mother, my only mother. It was fascinating to see how $840,000 could awaken so much love. Mark, I said, turning toward him. If you really love me, then respect my decision. This isn't just about the wedding. It's about 3 years of contempt, of constant requests for money, of treating me like an annoying obligation. Barbara stood up, staggering. This is my fault, she screamed hysterically. I'm the one who convinced him to say that. I wanted my mom to feel special. Her desperate confession revealed the manipulation I had always suspected. Barbara, I said, I appreciate your honesty, but that only confirms that you both planned my humiliation. Mark came closer, trying to take my hands. Mom, please, we can fix this. We can be a real family. Barbara will apologize. I'll do whatever you ask. Just don't punish me like this. His eyes were red, his voice broken. It was the first time in years I'd seen him show genuine emotion toward me. Mark, I sighed. Do you know what the saddest part of all this is? That you needed to know about my money to remember that you love me. A week ago, when you thought I only had a miserable pension, you hung up on me when I told you I had spent my savings on your wedding. Monica stood up abruptly. Well, this has been very emotional. But I think we all need some time to reflect. Her change in tactics was obvious. She could no longer pretend this was just a family misunderstanding. Now she knew she was facing a woman with enough resources to do whatever she pleased. You're right, I agreed. You need time to process this. Especially because there's more news. I took another document from my purse. I've decided to move to Europe. I've already bought an apartment in Barcelona. All 3 faces filled with horror. I'm leaving in 2 weeks. You can't go, shouted Mark. This is your home. Your family is here. The desperation in his voice was palpable. Mark, I replied. My home is where I'm respected. My family are the people who value me. Clearly that's not here. Barbara clung to Mark's arm. Tell her not to go. Tell her we'll do whatever it takes. It was pathetic to see how money had transformed their attitude toward me. The same woman who had told me I didn't need that much money was now begging me not to leave. There's only one thing that would make me reconsider, said slowly. All 3 leaned forward, hopeful. I want Mark to make a public apology. A video where he explains exactly what he did wrong at the wedding. And why he's sorry. And I want him to post it on his social media. Mark went pale. A public video. But that would be humiliating. The irony was perfect. He had humiliated me publicly. But now that it was his turn, suddenly humiliation was unacceptable. Exactly, I replied. Now you understand how I felt. Monica intervened quickly. That's reasonable. Mark can make the video. But Mark shook his head. I can't do that. My friends, my co-workers, everyone would see it. His pride was more important than our supposed filial love. Then I suppose there's nothing else to talk about, I said, walking toward the door. I'll show you out. Mark panicked. Wait. Give me time to think. But I had already made my decision. His reaction had confirmed what I needed to know. Mark, I said as I opened the door. You've had 45 years to think about our relationship. You've had 3 years to treat me with respect. You've had 3 weeks since the wedding to apologize sincerely. You don't need more time. You need better priorities. Music. The 3 of them left the apartment in silence. From my window, I watched them get into a taxi. Mark looked up toward my floor with a desperate expression. Barbara was crying on Monica's shoulder. It was a pathetic sight. But I didn't feel sorry for them. That night I poured myself another glass of wine and sat on my terrace. The city stretched at my feet, shining with thousands of lights. For the first time in decades I felt completely free. No more begging for money. No more family humiliations. No more living for someone who didn't value me. My phone rang several times. Mark, Barbara, even Monica sent me desperate messages. Promises to change. Pleas for forgiveness. Offers for family therapy. I ignored them all. They had already had their chance to be a real family. And they had wasted it. The next day I received an unexpected call. It was Javier, an old friend from the textile factory. Stephanie, I saw your son at the mall yesterday. He looked terrible. Is everything okay? Smiled. News traveled fast. Everything is perfectly fine, Javier. Finally, everything is the way it should be. Over the following days, Mark intensified his attempts to contact me. Calls at all hours, desperate text messages, even flowers sent to my apartment. All his efforts were in vain. He had crossed a line there was no coming back from. On the fourth day after our confrontation, I decided to go out and do some shopping. I had to prepare for my move to Barcelona, and wanted to buy a few elegant things for my new life. I chose the most exclusive jewelry store in the city, a place where only the truly wealthy shopped. When I entered the boutique, the saleswoman looked at me with a hint of disdain. I was dressed simply. Nothing that revealed my true fortune. "How may I help you?" she asked, her tone condescending. "I'm interested in seeing some special pieces," I replied. "Diamond necklaces, perhaps some sapphires." The woman led me toward a modest display case. "These are our most affordable pieces," she said. Showing me jewelry she clearly considered appropriate for my supposed budget. I smiled politely. "Excuse me, but I meant your real special pieces. The ones you keep for VIP clients." Her expression shifted slightly. "Those pieces are very expensive, ma'am. They start at $50,000. Her tone implied she thought I couldn't afford them. "Perfect," I replied. "Show me all of them." I took out my platinum credit card and placed it on the counter. The saleswoman's eyes widened. As I examined a spectacular diamond necklace, I heard familiar voices near the entrance. It was Barbara and Monica, apparently also shopping. "We can't let her leave for Europe," Barbara whispered. "Mark is destroyed. He hasn't slept in days." "I'll handle it," replied Monica firmly. "That woman just wants attention. We'll make her an offer she can't refuse." They approached the counter where I was. But they didn't see me immediately because I was standing with my back to them, trying on the necklace. "Excuse me," Monica said to the saleswoman. "We're looking for something special for a family reconciliation. Something that shows how much we value a person." The saleswoman, who was now treating me like royalty after seeing my credit card, pointed toward the basic display cases. "We have some beautiful pieces over there." I turned around slowly. "Mrs. Monica, what a coincidence to find you here." Barbara let out a gasp when she saw me with the diamond necklace on. It was a spectacular piece that sparkled like fire under the jewelry store's lights. "Stephanie," Monica stammered. What a surprise." The saleswoman looked at us, confused. "Do you know each other?" "Oh yes," I replied with a smile. "We're family, or at least that's what they used to think." Monica turned red. "Mrs. Stephanie, what a beautiful necklace. It must be very expensive." Her voice had a forced tone, trying to keep up appearances. $65,000, I replied casually. "But I like it so much that I think I'll take it." Barbara swayed on her feet. $65,000 for a necklace. Her shock was delicious. This was the same woman who had told me that I didn't need that much money. Monica tried to recover her composure. "Mrs. Stephanie, since we're here, I'd like to talk with you. Mark is very sorry. He hasn't eaten in days. He can't work. Barbara is also suffering a lot." Her words sounded rehearsed, as if she had practiced this speech. "What a pity," I replied, examining a pair of sapphire earrings. "But I'm sure that you, as his real mother, will be able to comfort him." The saleswoman followed our conversation with fascination. She had probably never witnessed a family drama in her exclusive boutique. Barbara came closer to me, desperate. "Please, Mrs. Stephanie, Mark confessed everything to me. He told me that you adopted him when he was little, that you gave up everything for him. I didn't know the full story. Her tears seemed genuine, but they came far too late. Barbara, I said softly. 3 weeks ago at your wedding, when you humiliated me publicly, where were these tears of remorse? When Mark asked me for more money the next day, where was this understanding of my sacrifice? She couldn't answer. Monica quickly stepped in. Mrs. Stephanie, we understand that we made mistakes. That's why we're here. We want to make peace. We want to buy you something beautiful as a symbol of our apology. She gestured toward the display cases. Choose whatever you like. We'll pay. The irony was exquisite. They were offering to buy me a gift with my own money, indirectly, since everything they had came from Mark. And Mark had lived off my resources for years. How generous of you, I murmured. But I've already chosen what I want. I pointed to the necklace I was wearing. 65,000, Monica whispered, her face losing color. That's a lot of money. Her reaction revealed the truth about her supposed wealth. If they were truly as rich as they pretended to be, 65,000 wouldn't seem like that much. It's not much for me, I replied. In fact, I think I'll also take these earrings and this bracelet. The total bill came to $110,000. Barbara sat down in a chair, overwhelmed. Monica tried to maintain her dignity, but the shock was obvious. The saleswoman processed my purchase with professional efficiency. Will that be all on one card, ma'am? Yes, please. The sound of the machine processing the transaction filled the tense silence. Monica and Barbara looked at me as if I were an alien. Mrs. Stephanie, said Monica finally. Clearly you have resources we didn't know about. This changes things. We could become partners in some businesses. Form a true family alliance. Her change in tactics was so obvious it was almost pathetic. Mrs. Monica, I replied while putting away my new jewelry. When you thought I was poor, you treated me like trash. Now that you know I have money, you want to be partners. Don't you see how problematic that logic is? Her silence was revealing. Barbara stood up unsteadily. Mrs. Stephanie, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but Mark does. He really loves you. He's considering making the video you asked for. That information caught my attention. Really? And what's stopping him? His pride, admitted Barbara. He's afraid his friends and colleagues will judge him. But I told him that if he truly loves you, he should swallow his pride. For the first time, Barbara had said something sensible. It was ironic that she was the one who understood what Mark needed to do. Well, I said, heading toward the exit. When Mark decides what's more important to him, my love or his public image, he knows where to find me. I left them there, processing my words, and probably calculating how much money they had just seen come out of my card. That afternoon, while admiring my new jewelry in my apartment, I reflected on the encounter. Seeing Monica and Barbara in that jewelry store had been revealing. Their shock at my spending power confirmed that they had never truly taken me seriously as a person with means. To them, I had always been the poor relative who needed their charity. My phone rang. It was Mark. This time I decided to answer. Hello, son. His voice sounded hoarse, exhausted. Mom, Barbara told me she saw you at the jewelry store. She told me what you bought. There was a pause. I didn't know you had that much money available for personal expenses. Mark, I said. There are many things about me you never knew. Because you never asked. His breathing was heavy on the other end of the line. Mom, I'm considering making the video. But I need to know that you'll really forgive me if I do. That question revealed exactly who Mark was. Even in his apology, he needed guarantees. He needed to know what he'd get in return. Mark, I replied. A genuine apology doesn't come with conditions. Either you feel true remorse or you don't. You decide. Mark hung up without replying. Over the next 2 days, I heard nothing from him. Barbara sent me a few messages, saying he was deeply reflecting about the video. Monica tried calling me several times, but I didn't answer. I had already said everything I needed to say. On the third day, while packing my belongings for the move to Barcelona, my phone exploded with notifications. Mark had posted the video on his social media. With trembling hands, I opened the app to watch it. My son appeared on screen, clearly nervous, with deep circles under his eyes. "Hello everyone," Mark began, his voice shaky. "I need to talk about something very important. 3 weeks ago at my wedding, I made the biggest mistake of my life." He ran his hands through his hair, visibly distressed. "I told everyone that I wanted to thank my real mother," referring to my mother-in-law. My heart raced as I listened. "What I didn't say that night," he continued, "is that my real mother, my only mother, is Stephanie Herrera. She adopted me when I was 5 years old, after my biological parents died. For 45 years, she gave me all her love, her time, her money, her dreams." Tears began to roll down Mark's cheeks. "My mom worked 2 jobs to pay for my private school. She gave up having her own family to take care of me. She spent all her savings on my wedding, $40,000 she had saved all her life." His voice completely broke. "And I repaid her with public humiliation. I treated her as if she were nobody. I called her the day after the wedding asking for more money. I let my wife treat her badly. I allowed my mother-in-law to replace her." Mark was now sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm an ungrateful son who doesn't deserve the love of that extraordinary woman." The video continued for 5 more minutes. Mark detailed specifically each of his faults, each moment of contempt toward me. He admitted that he had known about the adoption since he was young, but that he had never truly thanked me for saving his life. He confessed that he had seen me as an ATM for years. "My mom, Stephanie, disinherited me," Mark continued, "and she has every right to do so. I destroyed our relationship out of vanity, wanting to impress people who weren't worth it. If she decides to go to Europe and never see me again, I'll understand, because I broke the heart of the only person who ever loved me unconditionally." Music. The video ended with Mark looking directly at the camera. "Mom, if you're watching this, I want you to know that I regret every second of pain I caused you. I don't expect your forgiveness. I only hope that you find the happiness you deserve, with or without me." The screen went black. My tears fell onto my phone as I read the comments. There were hundreds of them. "You're ungrateful," someone wrote. "That woman deserves a better son," commented another. "I hope your mother never forgives you," said a third. The video was going viral. My phone rang immediately. It was Javier, my friend from the factory. "Stephanie, I just saw Mark's video. Everyone is talking about it. Are you okay?" His voice reflected shock and compassion. "I'm fine, Javier. Better than I've been in years." "That boy looks devastated," Javier continued. "But what he did at that wedding was unforgivable. Are you really going to Europe?" I looked around my apartment. The packed boxes, the tickets already bought. "Yes, Javier. It's time for me to live for myself." During the following hours, I received calls from people I hadn't heard from in years. Former co-workers, neighbors, even a few distant cousins who had seen the video. All of them expressed their support and their outrage at the way I had been treated. "We always knew you were too good for him," my old supervisor from the factory told me. Barbara appeared at my apartment that same afternoon without announcing herself. Her face was swollen from so much crying. "Mrs. Stephanie, please open the door. I know you're there." Her voice sounded desperate. I finally opened it, more out of curiosity than compassion. "Mark hasn't stopped crying since he posted the video," Barbara said, walking in without invitation. "He's getting hundreds of hateful messages. His co-workers look at him differently. Some clients have cancelled meetings with him." Her description filled me with a satisfaction I hadn't expected. And should that matter to me? Asked coldly. Barbara dropped onto my couch. Mrs. Stephanie, he did what you asked. He made the public video. He completely humiliated himself. Isn't that enough? Her question revealed how little she understood the situation. Barbara, I explained patiently. The video doesn't erase 45 years of ingratitude. It doesn't undo the humiliation of the wedding. It doesn't repair the emotional damage that you all caused me for years. She looked at me as if I were being unreasonable. But he apologized publicly. He admitted his mistakes. Yes, I agreed. After discovering my money. After realizing he was going to lose $1 million inheritance. Do you think he would have made that video if I were truly poor? The question left her speechless. Because we both knew the truth. Barbara tried a different tactic. Mrs. Stephanie, I also made mistakes. I was very young, very immature. I let my mom influence my opinions about you. Her apologies sounded rehearsed, desperate. But now I understand. You are an extraordinary woman, strong, independent. Barbara, I interrupted. 3 weeks ago you told me that I didn't need that much money. You seated me at the back table at the wedding that I paid for. You allowed Mark to humiliate me publicly. At what moment during all those years did you show respect toward me? She couldn't answer. Besides, I continued, where is your husband now? Why didn't he come himself to apologize? Barbara lowered her gaze. He's ashamed. He says he can't look you in the eye after what he did. Her answer confirmed what I suspected. Mark was still a coward. Mrs. Stephanie, Barbara pleaded. Give us a chance. We can be a real family. Mark learned his lesson. So did I. Even my mom says she was wrong about you. The mention of Monica made me laugh. Oh, now Monica admits she was wrong. How convenient. Barbara stood up, desperate. What can we do? What do you need to forgive us? Her question showed she still didn't understand. She still thought this was a negotiation. That my forgiveness had a price. Barbara, I said, walking toward the door. Some things have no price. Some wounds don't heal. Some relationships can't be repaired. But family love, she began to say. Family love, I interrupted, is built on mutual respect, not on desperate pleas that appear only after discovering an inheritance. Open the door. Mark had 45 years to show genuine family love. He chose contempt. Now he must live with that decision. Barbara left crying. From my window, I saw her get into a taxi, speaking frantically on the phone, probably reporting to Mark that their last strategy had failed. The viral video, the public pleas, the promises of change. Nothing worked. That night, while dining alone on my terrace, I received a message from Mark. It was a photo of him in what seemed to be a therapist's office. Mom, I'm in psychological therapy. I'm going to work on becoming a better person. I love you. I deleted the message without replying. His therapy had come too late. His changes were reactive, not proactive. Everything he was doing now was out of fear of losing money, not out of genuine love for me. The difference was crucial. And Mark had already shown his true priorities. My flight to Barcelona was scheduled for 5 days later. As I looked at the city lights, I felt completely at peace with my decision. Mark had chosen to replace me as his mother. Now I was choosing to replace him as my son. The last days before my departure passed in a mixture of preparations and constant drama. Mark's video had reached over 1 million views. Comments kept pouring in by the thousands, most supporting me and condemning my son's ingratitude. Some local media outlets had even contacted Mr. Raoul, asking for interviews with me. Mrs. Stephanie has become a symbol for mothers mistreated by ungrateful children. Raoul informed me during our last meeting. There are women sharing their own similar stories on social media. Your case has struck a deep chord in society. The irony wasn't lost on me. After decades of silence, I finally had a voice. 2 days before my flight, Mark showed up in the lobby of my building. The doorman called to announce his presence. "Tell him I'm packing," I replied. "I don't have time for visits." From my window, I could see him waiting outside on the street for hours, like an abandoned dog. His presence irritated me, but his desperation no longer moved me. That same afternoon I received an unexpected call. It was Monica, but her tone had completely changed. "Mrs. Stephanie, I need to speak with you urgently. It's about my business." Her voice sounded tense, worried. "Your business?" I asked, intrigued. "What does that have to do with me?" "The scandal from the video has affected my company," admitted Monica with difficulty. "Some important clients have cancelled contracts. They say they don't want to associate with the family that mistreated an adoptive mother." Her confession filled me with satisfaction. The consequences were spreading beyond Mark. "What a shame," I replied without a hint of compassion. "But I'm sure a successful businesswoman like you will find a way to recover." The sarcasm in my voice was evident. "Mrs. Stephanie," pleaded Monica, "could you help me? A public statement saying you hold no grudge against our family. You want me to lie publicly to save your commercial reputation?" I interrupted. "Mrs. Monica, you orchestrated my humiliation at that wedding. You convinced Mark that I was replaceable. Now you are reaping what you sowed." I hung up before she could respond. The night before my departure, Barbara and Mark appeared together at my building. This time they came up unannounced, probably bribing the night doorman. When they knocked on my door, I was already in pajamas, relaxing with a glass of wine. "Mom, please," Mark shouted through the door. "Just give me 5 minutes. 5 minutes to explain everything." His voice was hoarse, desperate. "Mark," I replied from inside. "You had 45 years to explain things to me. It's too late now. You can't punish me forever," he finally exploded. "I'm your son, you have to forgive me." His demand revealed his true character. Even now, he believed he had the right to my forgiveness, that I owed him something. "Mark," I said clearly, "I don't owe you anything. You owe me 45 years of gratitude that I never received." Barbara intervened, her voice pleading. "Mrs. Stephanie, Mark has lost 10 kilos. He can't work. He can't sleep. The doctors say he's in severe depression." Her words were meant to awaken my maternal compassion, but they only confirmed that Mark was suffering from the consequences, not from genuine remorse. "Barbara," I replied, "when Mark humiliated me at the wedding, did you worry about my mental health? When he asked me for more money the next day, did you think about my emotional well-being? Suffering is an excellent teacher. Maybe Mark will learn something from it." They stayed outside my door for 2 hours, alternating between pleas and reproaches. They finally left when I threatened to call security. From my window I watched them go, Mark dragging his feet like a defeated man. It was the image of justice at work. The morning of my departure dawned sunny and clear. As the moving service collected my last belongings, it felt strangely light. I had lived 70 years. 45 of them devoted completely to Mark. Now, for the first time in decades, I would live only for myself. Mr. Raoul arrived to say goodbye and hand me the final documents. "Everything is in order, Mrs. Stephanie. The charitable foundation is already established. Your properties are under professional management, and the new will is irrevocable." His words officially sealed my new life. "Is there any chance you'll change your mind?" Raoul asked with professional curiosity. "Mark seems genuinely remorseful now." I smiled sadly. "Mr. Raoul, Mark is sorry for the consequences, not for his actions. If I were truly poor, do you think he'd be doing therapy and viral videos?" My flight left at 6 in the evening. At 3, while waiting for the taxi to the airport, my phone rang for the last time. It was Mark. This time I decided to answer, not out of compassion, but to finally close this chapter. "Hello, Mark." His breathing was heavy, uneven. "Mom," he whispered. I know it's late, but I need to tell you something before you go. I waited in silence. I looked through my childhood photos last night. You're in all of them. At every birthday, every graduation, every important moment. You were always there, always smiling, always proud of me. His words were beautiful, but they came too late. Mark, I said softly. Those photos were always there. My sacrifices were always obvious. My love was always unconditional. You didn't need to lose an inheritance to realize that. Silence stretched between us. Is there anything I can do? He finally asked, his voice breaking. Any way to earn your forgiveness? I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of 45 years of motherhood. Mark, forgiveness isn't earned, it's deserved. And that's built day by day, year after year, with respect and gratitude. You chose the opposite path. So this is forever, he murmured. This is your final decision. His tone carried a mix of desperation and acceptance. Mark, I said firmly. This isn't a decision. It's a consequence. The natural consequence of your choices over the years. I hung up the phone and turned it off. My taxi arrived punctually. As I walked out of the building for the last time, carrying only a small suitcase with the essentials, I felt like a butterfly emerging from its cocoon. 70 years to learn that self-love isn't selfishness. It's survival. The airport was full of families saying goodbye, couples embracing, children crying over temporary separations. I walked alone toward my new life. But I didn't feel alone. Felt free. Free from unreciprocated expectations. Free from unvalued love. Free from unrecognized sacrifices. As I waited in the boarding lounge, I thought about the women I had known throughout my life. Women who had sacrificed everything for their children, only to be forgotten or mistreated in their old age. My story had gone viral, because it wasn't unique, it was universal. Flight 87 to Barcelona, boarding now, announced the airport voice. I stood up, adjusted my purse, and walked toward my new life. I didn't look back even once. 6 months later, I was sitting on the terrace of my apartment in Barcelona, watching the sunset over the Mediterranean Sea. My new life had surpassed all my expectations. I had found peace, purpose, and for the first time in decades, genuine happiness. Happiness that didn't depend on anyone's approval. My apartment in the Gothic Quarter was perfect. 3 rooms with sea views. Decorated with furniture I had chosen. Filled with plants I cared for. Surrounded by neighbors who knew me as Stephanie, not as Mark's mother. Here I was simply an independent woman, living her best life. I had established a routine that filled me with satisfaction. Painting classes on Tuesdays. Volunteering at a single mother center on Thursdays. Dinners with my new friends on Saturdays. For the first time in my adult life, my time belonged entirely to me. No more waiting for calls that never came. No more plans cancelled by others' whims. The charitable foundation I had created with my inheritance, Brave Mothers, was thriving. It had already helped 50 women who adopted children without family support. Seeing their grateful faces gave me more satisfaction than all the years of unacknowledged motherhood. These women valued my support because they understood sacrifice. My Spanish phone rarely rang with drama. I had changed all my numbers, closed my old social media accounts, and completely cut ties with my past life. Mr. Raoul sent me monthly reports about my properties, but he never mentioned Mark, unless it was strictly necessary. One November afternoon, while reading on my couch, I received an unexpected email. It was from Javier, my old friend from the factory. Stephanie, I hope you're doing well in Barcelona. I'm writing because I thought you should know. Mark got divorced. Barbara left him 3 months ago. He also lost his job because of the video scandal. He's living with Monica now. The news didn't surprise me. Barbara had shown her true character. when she thought I was poor. Once Mark lost his status and money, it was logical that she abandoned him. I also wanted to tell you, Javier continued, that Mark has been going to intensive therapy. The therapist says he's working on deep issues of abandonment and gratitude. I deleted the email without replying. Mark's therapy, his divorce, his work problems, they were no longer my responsibility. For 45 years, I had carried his problems as if they were mine. Now he would have to navigate life without my emotional and financial safety net. A month later, in December, Mr. Raoul called with the news I had been expecting. Mrs. Stephanie, Mark is trying to contest the will. He hired a lawyer claiming that you weren't mentally competent when you made the changes. His legal strategy didn't surprise me. It was his last desperate resort. Does he have any chance of success? I asked calmly. Raoul laughed. None. We have videos of you signing the documents, psychological evaluations confirming your mental clarity, and witnesses to your decision-making ability. Besides, the judge has already seen the viral video, where Mark admits his mistreatment of you. Perfect, I replied. Let him lose the money he doesn't have on lawyers. It'll be an extra lesson about the consequences of his choices. Raoul processed the paperwork to defend my will, but we both knew it was a mere formality. Mark had lost legally and morally. In January I received a letter that arrived through the Spanish consulate. It was from Mark, handwritten on cheap paper. Mom, it began in trembling handwriting. I know I have no right to write to you, but I need you to know that I finally understand everything you did for me. Therapy has opened my eyes. The letter continued for 3 pages, detailing his therapeutic process, his realizations about his behavior, and his plans to become a better person. It ended with, I don't expect your forgiveness, but I hope you know that your love was not in vain. I'm trying to be the man you deserved as a son. I read the letter only once, and kept it in a drawer. His words were beautiful, but they came too late. The Mark who wrote that letter had always existed inside him. He had chosen to suppress that version of himself for decades out of vanity and convenience. His awakening was his responsibility, not my victory. In March, while celebrating my 71st birthday, in a seaside restaurant with my new Catalan friends, I reflected on my transformation. Carmen, a cheerful 60-year-old widow, raised her glass of cava. To Stephanie, the bravest woman we know, for daring to live for herself. And for rejecting toxic love, added Isabel, a retired artist. For proving that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity. Their words moved me more than any birthday wish Mark had ever given me in decades. These women valued me for who I was, not for what I could give. That night, in the privacy of my apartment, I allowed myself to cry for the first time since arriving in Barcelona. Not from sadness, but from relief. I had spent 70 years learning a crucial lesson. The love that diminishes you isn't love, it's manipulation. The family that only seeks you out in emergencies isn't family, it's convenience. I took out a photo of Mark when he was 10 years old, an image of us in a park, him smiling in my arms, after I taught him how to ride a bicycle. I loved you with all my heart, I whispered to the photo. But love doesn't mean allowing mistreatment. I hope you find the peace that I found. I put the photo in the same drawer where his letter was. My past as a self-sacrificing mother was over. My future as a whole woman had begun. At 71, I had finally learned the most important lesson of my life. It's never too late to choose yourself. From my terrace, I could hear the waves of the Mediterranean crashing against the rocks. The sound reminded me that life, like the sea, is in constant motion. Tides change, the storms pass, but the ocean remains. I too had learned to remain, but on my own terms. My phone vibrated with a message from the foundation. A new single mother had adopted twins and needed support. I smiled as I typed my response. This woman would receive all the help I never had, all the recognition I never received. Her gratitude wouldn't fill the void Mark had left, but it would build something new and beautiful. As I closed my phone, I looked once more toward the endless horizon. Barcelona had given me something I never thought possible at my age. A new beginning. I didn't regret adopting Mark. I only regretted not realizing sooner that kindness should never be practiced at the cost of self-destruction. The Mediterranean breeze moved the curtains of my terrace as I prepared to sleep. Tomorrow would be another day in my new life, full of possibilities I would choose. For the first time in 71 years, the future belonged entirely to me, and that finally was enough.